Hey everyone, Kyle Walker here. If you love cars, fixing things, or just want to understand your vehicle better, you're in the right place. I share hands-on tips, smart driving advice, and straight-up car talk without the fluff. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and stick around till the end. You don't want to miss what's coming up. Let's get into
Not
it.
all motorists are strongly interested in what ecological class their vehicle has. But in reality, sooner or later, many face the need to obtain such information and enter it in the relevant documents. Otherwise, a number of restrictions are imposed, among them the impossibility to drive a car outside the Russian Federation. There are several main ways how you can find out the ecological class of your car. Nobody hides it and does not try to hide it from you. On many cars, it is present in the most prominent place. It's just that no one gave it any importance before. If you need to determine the eco class of your vehicle, proceed consistently. On all new cars, it is easy to find this value. But there are some exceptions, in which case you will have to do some extra work to become a full owner of the ecological class, EC mark. Basically, the need for eco class arises in situations when you need to travel to another country with your personal car or to clear the vehicle. After all, if the car does not meet the declared mandatory requirements for environmental safety, you will not be allowed to pass through the border or simply not allowed to import the purchased car. What is an eco-class? Because of possible restrictions on the ecological class, it is recommended for a motorist to find out what category his car belongs to. This will allow you to pass customs checkpoints without hindrance when crossing state borders, or you will immediately realize that there is nothing to do abroad on a car with an assigned EC. To begin with, it is necessary to understand what the ecological class of your car means and what information is given by a mark like Euro 4. The environmental friendliness of vehicles is a matter for specialists. Ecologists collect information and statistics, with the help of which the level of danger and harm from automobile exhaust gases is clearly demonstrated. According to experts, one car emits 4 kilograms of exhaust per year. European countries, or rather their leadership, did not ignore this problem, and therefore developed the concept or definition of ecological class for a vehicle. That is, each vehicle has its own safety class depending on how much it pollutes the environment. At the same time, there is a ban and certain restrictions on the current ecological class if the vehicle does not already meet the updated established current standards. Within the framework of the adopted Geneva Convention, a special environmental regulation was developed, and similar norms are implemented in almost all countries of the world. In order to obtain authorization to import cars, the vehicle must meet a certain class of environmental friendliness. This is already determined by each country individually. In 2017, new norms were established, which are currently in force. They provide for not more than 0.05 g/kmch, up to 0.8 g/kmco, no more than 0.06 g/km/noe. All of this complies with the standards that are designated as Euro 5. At the same time, automobile companies continue to produce models whose eco-class meets the requirements of Euro 4 and Euro 3. Anything below this value has been removed from production. The task of the EC is to tighten the current requirements to the level of environmental safety of vehicles in operation. Such measures are aimed at preserving the environment. After all, exhaust is one of the most dangerous and harmful pollutants in the world. To combat this problem, were developed environmental standards, divided into classes. Environmental classes. Since you already know what its ecological class means for the car, you can understand their varieties in more detail. It is not superfluous to understand how many ecological classes there are for different cars. At the moment, there are 5 eco-classes, the highest of which is Euro 5. Euro 1. The very first eco-class, the requirements of which applied to vehicles with a gasoline-powered propulsion system. Compared to the other categories, the requirements are the lowest here. But we had to start somewhere. Euro 2. More serious restrictions have been developed here. The requirements for the emission of harmful substances from the exhaust have increased by 3 times. That is, the norms have changed significantly, because of which car manufacturers had to develop more effective ways of cleaning the exhaust. Since the Russian Federation has joined the Geneva Convention, the norms are also in force in Russia. At the same time, It is prohibited to drive a car with Euro 2 Eco class in a number of cities of the country. Euro 3. Here there are requirements for compliance with a certain maximum level of harmful substances in the exhaust, which produces a car, operating respectively on diesel and gasoline fuel. Compared to the previously considered Euro 2, the concentration of hazardous components has decreased by 30%. Euro 4. In Russia, this norm has been adopted only since 2010. The total indicator of harmful components in the exhaust has decreased by another 40% compared to the previous class. Euro 5. The most modern and rigid standard of environmental friendliness, which cars and trucks are obliged to comply with. It has been in force in the Russian Federation since 2014, but it became mandatory for all cars only in January 2016. Read also, car safety. How slip prevention works. We should not forget about the ongoing development of the latest Euro 6 standard. It has been in force in Europe since 2015, and several important changes have been made during this time. The new eco standard should come into full force only in 2019. When it will become relevant for Russia, experts do not know. Ways of determining the EC. If the motorist is faced with the need to determine the EC, it should be understood how exactly to find out the ecological class of your vehicle according to the table, PTS, or VIN code. These three methods are the most effective and easy to use. What exactly you need to do and where to look, we will analyze separately for each method of checking the established ecological class of the car. TCP to begin with. Let's find out how you can determine the ecological class of your own car by simply opening the car documents. You do not need to go anywhere, call, or write. It is enough to look in the passport of your technical means, or PTS. Most drivers do not take their car passport with them, and they do absolutely right. That is why it is probably somewhere at home in the nightstand or in the closet. In reality, the PTS is needed only when buying and selling a car. Find the document. If the car has been registered relatively recently, the ecological class mark should be located directly on line 13. It is written in capital letters, and therefore there should be no difficulties with deciphering. If the PTS you have more than 5 years, then the mark about Eco class may be present in the column where additional information is entered. But earlier such marks were made very rarely. Therefore, only in exceptional cases it will be possible to find it. When this method to determine the ecological class failed, go to the next. Rostandart is a state organization that deals with the certification of vehicles. To make the life of drivers a little easier, special tables were invented and developed. It is by them that you can understand how to correctly find out the ecological class of your engine. Still, it is the engine, not the body, that provokes exhaust. Relying on the table, it is not difficult to obtain the necessary information. But at the same time, the motorist should know in advance about the country and region where the car was released, the date of entry into the sale, manufacturing company. Just take into account that this method of determination does not give a 100% accurate result, because the car may have been in serious accidents, after which a major overhaul was carried out. Engines are often changed, because of which the eco class declared by the manufacturer does not correspond to the real values for a particular car. Therefore, many agree that the best way to determine the EC is to contact specialized companies. They are engaged in the provision of services to determine the environmental friendliness and have the appropriate certificates. VIN code. If the previous two methods do not suit you for one reason or another, then you can use all Rostandart, but already add your VIN code to the search. To do this, go to the official website of the department. There is a special column where the VIN is entered. Then you click on the search and wait for a response to the request. When the system processes the data, you will get the result, which will contain the following information: the type of your vehicle, the make of the vehicle being checked, the Eco class approval number, the date of signature of the class approval document, the period of validity of the document, the specific Eco class. In some cases, after entering the VIN code, the system does not give anything. This is a common phenomenon, so you should not worry. The car has probably been assigned an Eco class, but the VIN code is just missing from the agency's database. You should take a different route. If necessary, contact the organization in person. If it is simple curiosity, such activities will be unnecessary. But when you plan to travel outside the Russian Federation, crossing state borders, be sure to find out the EC. Do not forget that for obtaining a certificate from Rosstandart, we'll have to pay. The actual price for the service is 300 rubles. Now you will know exactly how the ecological class of the car is determined and what it depends on. This is important information for some cases, without which you can banally not let you out of the country. On new cars, there are practically no problems with the search. It is enough to look in the PTS on line 13, where the ecological class of your car is indicated. But it happens that it is not indicated in the vehicle passport. Here it is necessary to go other ways. EC is not specified or is not installed. Things are quite different if it suddenly turns out that the ecological class is not set for your vehicle. You should not panic here. This situation is not uncommon in Russia, and there are ways to solve the problem. The main thing here is to act consistently and competently. And if it does happen that the ecological class is not specified in the PTS, then you should look for ways of solving the problem. Read also what a motorist kit consists of to begin with. Let's keep it simple and refer to the available STS for your car. Modern registration certificates have a special line on the front side, fourth from the bottom, where the actual value of the installed ecological class should be recorded. If the mark is present, memorize this value. In this situation, your car is subject to the rules that came into force in 2018. But earlier STS were issued without a line for the ecological class. Therefore, if the motorist does not have the appropriate field, his vehicle is already subject to other separate rules. They will come into full force only in 2021. There are cars that have an ecological class in the passport, but it is not in the registration certificate. If you look into the rules of the road, it turns out that in such a situation the eco class is not indicated on the car. Therefore, it will be subject to quite serious restrictions. This is especially unpleasant in situations when a person bought an expensive and modern car with the highest class of environmental friendliness Euro 5. But the purchase was made at a time when the STS was not marked. If the registration certificate does not contain an ecological class, you should apply to the traffic police department, where you will be obliged to issue a new STS. But you do not have to be in a hurry, as the new rules will take effect from the beginning of July 2021. The replacement procedure itself is carried out quickly, and to change the STS, you will have to pay about 500 rubles of state duty. There are situations when the PTS does not have a 13th column or special marks, or it is recorded that the eco class is not installed. In this case, you will have to make changes by applying to the registration offices of the State Automobile Inspection, and you will have to prepare documents proving that your vehicle meets the standards of this or that ecological class. There is a problem with the evidence, because today there is no regulatory document that would clearly regulate the procedure and give specific answers to such a question. Even technical inspection will not help. According to the rules, within the framework of the technical inspection, they check the level of environmental friendliness, based on the already specified ecological class. In other words, the task of specialists is to compare the actual exhaust emissions with the specified eco class. The best solution is to submit an expert assessment to the traffic police. There are quite a few certified organizations that have the right to check and assess the environmental friendliness of a vehicle. It is much easier to get an opinion than to look for an OECS, which is available only to the automaker itself, and the company is unlikely to send copies to motorists. Possibility of changing the EC. Not seldom car owners ask questions about how to change the ecological class for their car, and by changing which element it is realistic to achieve a positive result. In fact, there is an option how to change the current ecological class of the car to a higher one in the PTS passport. This sometimes becomes a necessity in order to meet the current requirements. Remaking the mark in the documents is carried out after the vehicle is re-equipped, and it mainly refers to the change or complete replacement of the power unit. The only question is how you can legally change the ecological class of your vehicle. Here you will have to apply to an accredited organization that has the right to carry out such activities for the conversion of vehicles. Your car will be fitted with a new engine or simply be redesigned to reduce the level of harmful emissions. To carry out the procedure of changing the EC, it is required to collect a package of documents, which consists of a copy of the vehicle registration certificate, passport data of the car owner, the original vehicle passport, PTS. When all the work is completed, the car owner receives the relevant documents in hand. With them, he goes to the traffic police department, hands them the papers, and the department's employees make changes to the PTS. A special mark is put, which confirms the fact of changing the eco-class. The essence of the action of eco-classes is very clear. They are made to reduce the level of environmental pollution. And to achieve this, it is necessary to get rid of old vehicles. Raising the requirements. Automakers are obliged to make cars more environmentally friendly. They will simply not be allowed to sell them if the eco-class is below the required standards. Each country has its own rules and standards. Some introduce a new ecological class as soon as it appears. Others still have no problem allowing the operation of vehicles in their country whose ecological class barely reaches even the Euro 2 standard. The only problem is that a car with Euro 2 will not be able to enter the territory of a state where the minimum eco-class Euro 4 is in force. And soon countries will start to completely abandon Euro 4 and Euro 5, as the Euro 6 standard is being actively developed and approved. There the restrictions are even more severe and serious. Automakers need to try hard to make their cars meet the new environmental standards. In conclusion, understanding the ecological class of a car is essential for making informed choices that benefit both the environment and your wallet. By checking the vehicle's documentation, consulting online databases, or using dedicated apps, you can easily find out its classification. This knowledge empowers you to select vehicles that align with your values and contribute to a more sustainable future. Thank you for watching, and we hope you feel more equipped to make eco-friendly decisions when it comes to your transportation.